Well, gracious greetings, St. Stephen family and guests. Welcome to another edition of Living Water for Thirsty Thursday. We've been talking about the 7 deadly sins, and today we want to talk about greed or greediness. Prayerfully, your takeaways today will be that of when our wants actually become perceived needs. We will also talk about when we exceed our needs and our wants. And then we'll talk about, if you would, the differences between coveting and jealousy, or the symbolisms between the two that people speak of. The scripture reading that I want to come is from 1 Timothy, the 6th chapter, just the 9th and the 10th verse. It says, "But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." And so if you've read this text before, you know it starts right off talking about those that would be rich or those that would be wealthy. And so when we speak of greed, we're actually speaking of a person that not only wants to be wealthy, but in essence, enough is never enough. They're always charging after more, and it's basically insatiable, meaning it can never be quenched. And so it says that is actually the snare, that is actually the trap. And our first point that we were talking about is when our wants actually become perceived needs. It's trickery from the enemy that we feel like, having some extra money is a need rather than a want. But there's only really a few things in this world that we need. We need God, and we need His Word. We need definitely some water. We definitely need some sustenance, some food, and we need the air that we breathe. And then there's probably a few other things that we really, really need. But from there, safely things start falling into the want category. But in this text, when you're looking at the rich, when you're looking at wanting to be wealthy in an excessive way, those things start to get flipped by the enemy, and we start seeing wants as needs, and it kind of twists how we go about things. And so that's when we fall into temptation, as this text says, and a snare is a trap, right? It's something that grabs hold of you. It's something that keeps you in place. It keeps you from moving forward or doing what you are purposed to do. And then it says, and into many foolish or silly things that don't seem to make sense. And so how many times have we done something that really didn't make sense, but before we did it, it seemed like it made perfect sense? That is the essence of temptation. It is trickery that makes us feel like we're going towards the right thing or a needy thing, but we're actually going after a selfish, more wanted thing. And so he says, and then there are hurtful lusts that tie in with that. And that word lust means longing for that which is actually forbidden, that we shouldn't have in the first place, but we are longing for it. And so it says, not only is the lust part bad, but it says it's hurtful lusts that we go for. And it says, and it drowns men in destruction and perdition means ruin. And so it leads us to a dark and a dismal and difficult place. And that was kind of that second point that we were speaking of, that it moves us to this place where we have gone to this excessive place of going past even wants and needs. And so it's past me just wanting it, and it's past even being a need. It's just because I can. And remember, when we talked about just because I can doesn't mean that I should. And then verse 10 is where it brings it home even more. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And obviously this love here that is speaking of, it's this passion, it's this desire, it's the sacrifices that one is willing to make. But really where it goes for all of us to really sink our teeth into, it's actually speaking to when we get to the place of addiction. And we already know addictions have caused people to lose their job. Addiction has caused people to lose their marriages. Addiction has caused people to walk away from their children. Addiction has caused people to lose their own life, their own wealth, their own well-being. Anything they have, addiction will be. And that love of money is speaking of an addiction to money is the root of all evil, because with that comes this desire for power and control as well. And so while some have coveted after, they have erred from the faith or have been lured away from the faith. But here is where that last point we're talking about, that coveting or that jealousy. And coveting, we know very well, it simply means that I want what somebody else has, specifically what they have, and I'm also making a plot or a plan to take it. That is coveting. Jealousy is typically when, in the most fashions that we see it in, is something that I feel like is mine that will now need to be shared or taken to or given to someone else. And jealousy says, I'm not having that. And so it's that sense of me owning or having then to share or a sense of my property going somewhere else. That's jealousy. I can't have that. A lot of times people speak of the term and say, oh, I'm so jealous of you because you get to do this or you get to do that. And in essence, a lot of times they're either more envious is the more appropriate word, or they're coveting something that somebody else has. But jealousy typically is about ownership that now has to turn into a shared relationship or a total giveaway. And so this text is really helping with that, in that it says when you covet all of these things, it can make us become greedy. It can make us long for that which is forbidden. I'm not supposed to have somebody else's. I'm only supposed to be thankful and grateful for what I have. And it says at the end of this verse, and pierce themselves through with many sorrows, because they're looking over at what they don't have rather than really being appreciative and thankful for obviously what they do have. The closing verse that I wanted to bring all of this home on, because those texts primarily focused in on the rich and the monetary aspect, but I wanted us to get a more holistic view of what the covet and the greed also comes from. And it's all the way from the 10 Commandments in Exodus, the 20th chapter, the 17th verse. It says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor their maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And that is laying out covet holistically, or greed holistically. The whole point is you probably already have an ass, you probably already have an ox, you probably already have a maidservant or a manservant. You might even have a wife or a husband, and you may even have your own house. The point is, don't go and be greedy and also want your neighbor's house. And then that real evil covet goes to where not only do I want that which is theirs, I don't want them to have it because I'm not a big fan of them. That's where it moves into that evil level. So yes, we have to work through that greed. And of course, since it's one of the 10 Commandments, surely it's one of the 7 deadly sins. So prayerfully, this has helped you to navigate through these waters a little bit more. Tune in next week as we continue on this journey and we talk about lusting. Continue to make God proud in all you say, think, and do.